Okay, so here we go. We will be doing this PowerPoint is a continuation of cause effect here in a minute. We do have just one of those light switches on, right? Yes, we do. I want to talk about first like the grading. So with the English 1301 with the essays, I had to, basically what I did on Sunday was, on Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, because I also have a lot of 1302 and Britlit students, I had to grade discussion posts. Have I explained how discussion posts work in my other classes before? No? Well, my other classes, which are literature-based classes, we have these things called discussion posts, which they tell me what they feel about the literature, like the stories for the week, and what they got out of it. And so I see if there are any misconceptions, any problems in like their understanding, stuff they might have missed. And in order to talk about the stories that week, I have to grade those first. And so I've been grading those all semester before. We didn't have any essays to do, but I've been grading those every Sunday, and Monday and Tuesday. So I got all those done last night ahead of the usual schedule, so I don't have to do any tonight, so I can just move right into essays. On Sunday, though, I did want to go through, and I went through every single person's essays, and I found all the ones that people had multiples of. So like if you submitted it 4 times, I went and said, the first 3 I gave a 0 to and said, don't worry about the 0 that you see. I will grade the most recent submission. So if anybody got something like that where you got a 0 on your essay, it's not permanent. It's just me zeroing out the first few, and then I'll grade the one that you turned in that's the final copy. And then, of course, once you get your grade back, once you see my feedback, you can make changes and turn it back in again, and it's a revision. And I can give you, if you if you get like 50 the first time, that'd be crazy. If you get like 50, and you're like, man, I don't like that. Look at my feedback, make changes, turn it in again. And if I think that it's a 95 paper that time, well, now you have a 95. So it's not like you 5-10 points. And a lot of people will forget about what I said about revision from like the syllabus day. But yeah, just remember that any paper that you have, you can get whatever grade you want on it if you're willing to work to, do the feedback and look at the feedback and make changes. I also went through and tried to find people who submitted in like the wrong format, who I saw like a blue button instead of the essay in the viewer. Because I showed you before when I submitted in class, you saw like the essay, you could see it once I hit submit, right? It was like you saw on the left like where the grade would be. On the right it said like okay, but in the center you saw your paper that you just submitted. If you go in there and you look and you see a blue button, there are seats. As opposed to that one day where there were no seats. You will see like a blue button that says like your file name, and then like a blue button that says downloaded or something. I generally save those essays to grade for last because it's easier to download them all at once than grade them all. So if you go in there and you don't see your essay in the viewer immediately, where I can see it, then it'd be best if you went back in there and submitted it again in an acceptable format. Like Microsoft Word and PDF are the 2 formats that will show up in that viewer. If you did an open Office document text or Office document text, then it won't submit properly and it'll have me download it separately to read it. That generally happens if people use a program called Apache OpenOffice or a program called WordPad, which is what comes with Windows if you don't have Microsoft Office. So it'd be better if you typed it on something like, if you don't have Microsoft Word or access to Microsoft Office, it'd be better if you use something like Google Docs, which will let you export to and download as PDF and DocX if you want to get your essay graded, sooner in the future. Additionally, I did have some people, even though I said not to, write in the write submission box, like where you click the write submission and either pasted your essay in or you typed it manually and then hit submit that way, and I prefer people not do that. There's very little that you can control on that write submission box, like formatting wise. So I prefer people not do that in the future. Try to write it in another program and then download as and then submit it in an attachment on Blackboard. But I'll be getting into those this evening. So I've scanned through them, gotten rid of any that need to be got rid of. Do you have any questions before I move on to talking about what we're doing today? Nope. Well, let's do it. You ready? Or you're just here, so no matter what happens, you're just going to do it. Is that kind of what it is? Who's had 2 classes so far? Me too. tired, right? Hungry.
Wait, 2 including this class?
Whose day? This is their 3rd class. Yeah. I'm glad we don't have like 6:30 classes. That'd be awful. Like AM. Heck no. It's called online. Let me go ahead and start today's. Basically a continuation of cause effect today. And Jose, it's a little bit of a reach, but could you flip one of those switches off that's on?
Week 4, day 1.
Andrew's like, woo, glad I wasn't there today.
Hey.
So, I do want to mention something real quick. I mean, y'all in this particular class aren't absent very often, but if you are absent, I do want to be clear that my expectation, since I provide full videos of like the classes, in school it's like, oh, I was absent, what do we do? And the teacher would tell you briefly some summary of the class. Well, in my class, you have the complete and total option of attending the same class that everybody else did. You just could do it on YouTube. So often you'll say, hey, I was gone last week, what did I miss? And I'll say, it's on the video. Have a watch. And you can just go watch the whole lesson that everybody else got the benefit of, which is so lucky in your case. So, I mean, you could check the calendar on the syllabus, like just open it, and then it tells you what we do on those days if you wanted to really know, because I generally follow that pretty closely. I will try to tell you, though, if I go off book, so to speak, if I go off the calendar, but I generally don't. I'm just saying that because I've noticed some people are like, why would I have to watch the lesson? Well, because you missed. I was like, but I don't want to do that. I was like, sorry. That's what I expect. Then you have the same education as everyone else, right? That's what we should all hope for. It's not none of you are doing this. I just felt I should be clear for the future, because there are very few absences here, and when you are absent, my expectation is that you would catch up. Additionally, if there's an app out there that'll let you just throw a YouTube on and like do the audio, sometimes people do that, or just listen to it instead of having to watch it directly. Something you can't really do in class, because I'll see you just going, which would be awkward. Ready to move on? Move on. Week 4, day 1. We're going to continue cause and effect discussion, but first, an activity with some pieces of paper. In fact, I get a piece of paper out. Okay. So each of you are receiving a piece of paper today, one of these, which I will hand out now. You're going to have to make a difficult decision. Oh, that reminds me, I need to get this out too. What? You'll need something to write with, yes. 1302. Okay, I need a pen. Alright, so I'll hand out these tiny little pieces of paper. Sorry, this does take me a second to count out. That's a piece of paper. I think that's 4. Verify if there's too many or nothing. I think that's 4. That's 4. Tell me if it's on that. Okay, 4.
Do you want the sectional?
Yes, I do. Thank you. Extra, I do want. Okay. So, your names have been shuffled into a list. On this list, you have been paired with another student in class. Luckily, every single person's here today, so I don't have to do anything different with the list. You have no idea who the student is that you're paired with, nor will you. So you're paired with one other student in the class. Could be Loan, could be Quinn, could be, depending on what class you're in. I did not just pair Monarch with Monarch and Quinlan with Quinlan. I kind of mixed it all up. Now, any talking during this time or before I've gathered all the completed sheets will result in a 0, not just for the person talking, but the person talked to. So, in talking to someone, you also give them a 0 for the day. So don't do that. This includes trying to talk to me to ask a question. No questions will be allowed during this activity. So no talking to you or yourself or somebody else, or no asking me questions. I've told you everything that I want to tell you, and if there are questions that you have, then you have to address those later. Additionally, communicating in any way or allowing other students to see what you've written on your sheet will result in the same 0, so basically don't communicate in any way, shape, or form. That means no phones either, because I will be under the assumption that you're texting somebody else in class and you're talking about this. Okay. If I've not already done so at this point, I will now pass out a piece of paper. I have done so. First, write your name on the sheet of paper. This is the easy part. And I do mean my tiny sheet of paper that I handed out. Okay, here's where things get difficult. Then the difficult decision you must make is this. You will either write I live or I die on your paper. Okay, if you write I live, and so does the person that you're paired with on the list, you both get a 20 on the connection grade for today, which is the daily participation type grade. If you write I live, and the other person writes I die on the list, the person who wrote I live gets 100 points for the connection grade today, and the person who wrote I die gets 0. And that's the person that you are paired with on the list. If you write I die, and so does the other person, you both get a 60 on this connection daily grade. So the options are, if you write I live, you could end up with either a 20 or a 100. If you write I die, you could end up with a 0 or a 60. Those are your options. Both I live, both 20. Both I die, both 60. I live, I die, 100, 0. No, you can't know who you're paired with. Because then that would spark all kinds of I hate this person, so I'll make sure that I write this. So think about it. Write it now. As you write it, on your little sheet of paper on the same side as your name, so same side as your name, you'll write your declaration. I live or I die based on what you think is the best option amongst those 3. Or really 2 options, but those 3 possibilities. Do not discuss your decision with your neighbors. You know the consequences, as I've said. And I must switch the slide before the gathering of the papers, so hopefully everybody's written something down at this point or is thinking of writing something. Okay. After writing your declarations, fold your papers in half once, one time, so that fellow students do not see your declarations, and then pass them toward the center aisle, being careful not to view the choices of your fellow students. Okay, so I'll have to see those pass toward the center aisle. I will now gather all your little pieces of paper. You still may not talk. Additionally, communicating through facial features or looks, as you could call them, also not permitted. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, now, I don't know if I say this here. By now, I should have gathered a little piece of paper and will tally the results. Please remain quiet during this time. I do apologize. It just takes a minute. So, I know it's really weird to be like in a situation where you have to stay quiet and not look at your phone. But this is the situation that we're in. So, just have to unfold all these, and I'll do the counting. Some of the responses say more than they're supposed to, which I don't think I heard whispering. That person gets a 0. I know who it was. Don't do it again. However, if you do get a 0, there is a way to get it back later, but you have to not have any other transgressions. I don't have to explain the word transgressions, do I? Yes? I don't know what you're trying to say, but okay. Transgressions are when you go beyond what you're supposed to do. You are aggressing in a trans way, meaning you are moving through an aggression. I'm assuming that's what the root of the word is. I don't want to look it up on Webster's dictionary right now. That will take too much time. Did the Cowboys play the other day? I think they did. They won, right? The Cowboys did. Okay, those people get zeros. I'm not sure if I count. I think it's an utterance I need that communicates language. So I would think the gets a 0 for now, but you can get it back. The sh I think was there's no actual verbiage, so I don't really think that necessarily would count. But you do have a chance to get those back, so no worries there. Okay, I have separated these into the different answers, so it makes it easier to mark them all, because I can mark the checkbox. Okay. Let's see. There we go. It'd be really bad if I had this like on a. Well, I mean, at this class, at this point, I think I've got basically everybody.
Somebody's coming you. Trying to pick up the phone. Some of these people who are staring at you.
Oh, it's
Look at you.
telling me to make the pieces of paper for this lesson today, which I've already done. Okay. No speaking. You can, of course, talk about that later. You really have to know who's who in the crowd. It probably would be easier if I just made it alphabetical, but I do not. Has anybody ever heard of random.org? Nobody? Okay. It's a place where you can randomize lists of things, which I use pretty extensively every semester. I use it now. I also use it. Oh, good one. I also use it when we do the presentations at the end of the semester. Oh, it's looking pretty bad. Yeesh. Thought it was going to get easier when there were less names. Okay, now it is getting easier. Yeah, you probably will. Let's see. Okay, now we've done all these. So, there aren't very many of these left. Okay. Sorry, this just takes a minute. No working on other homework. I do appreciate the work ethic you have, but it's not for this moment. Okay. All right. Well, there we go. I would like to say in advance, I apologize for the time it takes to tally the results. I already started this. Okay. Unfolding reading names, hearing everyone properly on this takes time, especially in large classes. Your patience and silence were appreciated greatly. The number of 100 grades is 6. Number of 0 grades is 6. Oh, yeah, equal to that. There are, how many grades is 16? It's very easy to find these. None. And the number of grades of 20 is roughly, oh shoot, I can't even count that high. The rest. So there's 6 hundreds, 6 zeros, and the rest are 20s. So how many students do we have in this class? 30? 37. And actually, ironically, one of those hundreds is from somebody not being paired because it's 37 students. So, well, actually, I don't know if that's true anymore. Oh yeah, somebody was paired with somebody who didn't have an answer, so that makes sense. So, yeah, lots of 20s. That's a lot of 20s. Ouch, that's awful. Can there be another option? That's an excellent question. Thank you for asking it. Especially considering the chances are the results weren't ideal for the class as a whole for the exercise we just did. That is quite unfortunate. It is. However, I will display one other option that could supersede and replace the results of the previous exercise. Chances are most of you had 0s and 20s and no one had a 60. That's true. That's exactly right. Well, I mean, some people had 100, but not very many. However, with this other option, you can all have a 100 on this connection grade, all except one person. So, if you vote yes on this option, then we will all have a 100 except one person. Bless you. It's not the same. Before I detail the other option, I must remind you all again that there will be no talking, or you and the person you're talking to will receive a 0 regardless. However, your earlier talking 0s are now erased if the second option is chosen. So as long as you chose the option where you say that we do this other option, then everybody whose 0s were here before, they're now gone. And if I called you out earlier, I do know who you are. And what is that option? The other option is, if a majority of you vote yes to this other option, all of you can have a 100 on this connection grade today, except one person who will get a 0. Here's how it would work. I will roll this die, which is the singular form of dice. For a side of the room, 1, 2, 3, or 4, 5, 6. So 1, 2, 3 is over here, 4, 5, 6 is over here. Once more for a table on that side, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or I'll roll again. Then once more for an individual at that table. So if it's 2 people at a table, it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If it's 3, there'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Or if there's 4, I'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, I'll have to roll again. The person roll will get a 0 after all those rolls, and the rest of you will receive a 100. So really just one person gets a 0, the rest get a 100. You got 6 people right now who already have 0s. So, weigh the options. You'll vote for this option on more pieces of paper coming around soon. You'll write I live if you want to roll, I die if you don't want to roll. Writing your name on the sheet this time is not necessary since I don't have to pair your names up for this step in the process. Although you're not restricted from writing your name if you really want to. I would also prefer that students not fold this time because it makes it a lot easier to count. Again, no talking or communicating of any kind. I will gather these paper tally results and switch the slides. So, you will now vote, and you'll vote I live for yes, I want to roll, or I die for no, I don't. 4. If I pass out too many, just I'm going to use an extra vote. This time. It's all about survival. That's 4. No, I think it's 3. If I need to pass out one more to a row because you're sure, just let me know. Bless you. Which was a cough, but still. Okay, so say I need another sheet. Did I miss one? Okay. Right, I live if you want to go ahead and do the roll thing, and one person gets a 0, or I die if you don't want to roll, and everybody keeps the grades they have. And everybody keeps the 0s they got for talking. Remember, no need to fold. If you have folded it, unfold it, and then pass them all to the center. Try to do it upside down, though, so you can't do it fun. If you've already done it, though. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right, it should be much easier to count since I'm literally just counting. Let's see. Oh, I got 2 there. I don't think this is going to be very difficult to decide. Okay, let me see. If there's only 3 I dies. Yes, I believe that means that I live 1. So we will be rolling. Because 3 I dies is not going to be enough. 3. Okay, so just for transparency's sake, I'll roll on a table in front of you. So do it right here, right here. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 3. This side of the room. This is so fun. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, gotta roll again. Gotta be on the table. So there's nothing shady. 1, this table. 4 people. Gotta be somebody. 4. Jonathan! No talking. You don't want to get it all new zeros. Jonathan's like, it doesn't matter now. Oh, yeah, sure. Well, I mean, wait 2 seconds. Here's though we will be getting 100 except 1 person. If not in now, we will be rolled. I would like to say congratulations to everybody, but a sincere sorry to Jonathan for that bad bit of luck. Maybe next time. Oh, by the way, of course, I'm just kidding. Now you can go. You all get 100, even you, Jonathan. So, but the question is, why did all this happen? How did 1 person have taken the fall for all of us? And how do we let it happen? You probably want to know the answer to that question, so let's look at some cause and effect examples and figure out what happened earlier. So, by the way, yes, you can talk again. Like your mouths can make sounds and ask questions. So that was weird. Now, I feel that having examples of arguments we could talk about are pretty useful as a class, right? We saw the terminology last week, main contributory causes, remote immediate causes, but we didn't really get to see what somebody else's cause and effect analysis would look like. Like, what does that look like in the world when it's just done naturally? The book does have examples in writing, and I have the sample essay, but I'd like to jump across mediums to show you what cause-effect analysis looks like in other styles of presentation. So we'll be watching somebody else's cause-effect analysis in video form today. So they put together a presentation where they've done a lot of cause and effect analysis, but they're not using the terminology we use. They're not saying main, contributory, immediate, remote. We just sort of have to figure out exactly what those things are on our own. So the first example, and probably the only example we'll get to, is from Philip Zimbardo. Has anybody heard of that guy? Anybody know who that is? By the way, you can talk, so you can answer questions. Have y'all heard of TED videos? Y'all probably watch those in school, don't you? Yeah. I doubt you've watched this one, but it's possible. You may take psychology in high school. Some of you do. Have y'all covered the Stanford prison experiment? Then you may have seen this, but it's a video that I've seen probably 45 times or more.
I've seen the movie.
We saw it here.
Huh?
We saw it here in our psychology class.
Oh, you did? I don't know if you've watched the TED Talk of Phil Zimbardo?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, like the Stanford.
Like a movie?
Yeah, they made a movie about it.
Or the actual video that they made? It was like the documentary at the time.
The documentary of the,
Okay. So it was like old.
of what happened.
Okay. Yeah, so I don't show that. I show like him talking about his experience with that. And TED Talks are great. Y'all apparently have known about them. So, I mean, there are various ones that pop up all the time. My favorite one is actually one by an educator talking about how we test kids, just test them and test them and test them, and basically we turned education to a joke of what it used to be. Now, this guy talks about why ordinary men can do evil things. And I want you to pay particular attention to how he talks about cause and effect, because he is specifically talking about them, whether or not he's using our exact terminology. He is basically figuring out what are the many causes of the result, which is people going bad. Now, there is a small portion of the video, which I will skip, no matter what. This shows photos taken by soldiers at the Abu Ghraib prison complex in Iraq. These photos are very violent in nature, not suitable for all audiences. Specifically, I can give you a summary right now, but it's like, and I'll probably give you a summary later too, but it's like some soldiers who were in this prison, like, took some of the prisoners who were there and like put them in like sexual positions and took photos, made them like do gross stuff with like, poop. They took their dead bodies and stacked them and like took smiling selfies with them. It was really like creepy stuff. And in case you think I'm avoiding the issue, this is afterwards how we'll find out what happened at the beginning of class and the way it worked, why it worked the way it did. So I will start the video and we'll skip from 501 to 655, and Jose, if you will reach over and do the other switch. Worst day for this. Andrew is like, I got out of this. It was great. one or two things I want to warn you about. One is, does anybody think that I talk fast? Okay. This guy talks faster. He's smarter than I am, and he thinks faster than I am, so the words can't keep up with what he's thinking. So he does his best. Additionally, I think that he made like a 30-minute presentation that he knew he had to do in 20 minutes. So he's pushing it through even faster. So I do apologize for that. But I think after a couple minutes, it becomes a little more natural. He kind of even slutters a little bit because he's trying to go so fast. But another thing that he does is the beginning, when he's trying to set up, he's basically trying to introduce the topic of evil and what makes people do evil things. And as a result, he decides to use a religious introduction. Like he talks about like God and the devil, sin and righteousness. He also brings up like Lucifer, and not everybody's particular religious texts that you believe in have this particular story that he's talking about, nor do your opinions necessarily match the ones that he have when he's talking about it. But I don't want you to think this guy is not a guy who his profession is studying religion. He studies psychology and sociology. So I want you to pay attention more to like what he says after all that religious introduction, not necessarily what he says to this religion, because he's not a religious expert. He's just not. He's an expert in psychology and sociology. So pay more attention to that stuff than his introduction. Don't judge him for that introduction and think, well, I'm not going to listen to anything else he says because I disagree with this one thing he said about Jesus, because I think that that's unfair. Okay? They're smart people.
Dramatists, theologians have grappled with this question for centuries. What makes people go wrong? Interestingly, I asked this question when I was a little kid. When I was a kid growing up in the South Bronx, inner city ghetto in New York, I was surrounded by evil, as all kids are who grow up in the inner city. And I had friends who were really good kids who lived out the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde scenario of Robert Louis Stevenson. That is, they took drugs, got in trouble, went to jail, some got killed, and some did it without drug assistance. So when I read Robert Louis Stevenson, that was in fiction. The only question is, what was in the juice? And more importantly, that line between good and evil, which privileged people like to think is fixed and impermeable, with them on the good side and the others on the bad side, I knew that line was movable and it was permeable. Good people could be seduced across that line, and on some rare circumstances, bad kids could recover with help, with reform, with rehabilitation. So I want to begin with this wonderful illusion by Swiss artist M.C. Escher. If you look at it and focus on the white, what you see is a world full of angels. But let's look more deeply. And as we do, what appears is the demons, the devils in the world. And that tells us several things. One, the world will always be filled with good and evil, because good and evil is the yin and yang of the human condition. It tells me something else, if you remember. God's favorite angel was Lucifer. Apparently, Lucifer means the light. It also means the morning star in some scripture. And apparently he disobeyed God, and that's the ultimate disobedience to authority. And when he did, Michael the archangel was sent to kick him out of heaven along with the other fallen angels. And so Lucifer descends into hell, becomes Satan, becomes the devil, and the force of evil in the universe begins. Paradoxically, it was God who created hell as a place to store evil. He didn't do a good job of keeping it there, though. So
don't judge him on that. Okay, that's just him setting this up. Now he's going to talk about the thing he is an expert in, which is psychology and sociology, which he is very credible.
This arc of the cosmic transformation of God's favorite angel into the devil, for me, sets the context for
Is the Lucifer thing? I have just a question real quick. Is the Lucifer thing, is that in any actual religious text, or is it more of a...
In the Bible.
It's in the Bible that God's favorite angel was like Lucifer, and that he was turned into a devil? Because I know that that's in Paradise Lost, and it makes the... I've read Paradise Lost now so many times I've forgotten that that's actually in the Bible.
Yeah.
Not just like in the like a New King James, it's there.
Yeah. Lucifer was cast down.
Okay, I'm just curious. Well, I might look that up.
Human beings who are transformed from good, ordinary people into perpetrators of evil. So the Lucifer effect, although it focuses on the negatives that people can become, not the negatives that people are, leads me to a psychological definition. Evil is the exercise of power, and that's the key. It's about power. to intentionally harm people psychologically, to hurt people physically, to destroy people morally or ideas, and to commit crimes against humanity. If you Google evil, a word that should surely have withered by now, you come up with 136 million hits in a third of a second. A few years ago, I'm sure all of you were shocked, as I was, with the revelation of American soldiers abusing prisoners in a strange place in a controversial war, Abu Ghraib in Iraq. And these were men and women who were putting prisoners through unbelievable humiliation. I was shocked, but I wasn't surprised, because I had seen those same visual parallels when I was the prison superintendent of the Stanford Prison Study. Immediately, the Bush administration military said what? What all administrations say when there's a scandal. Don't blame us. It's not the system. It's the few bad apples, the few rogue soldiers. My hypothesis is American soldiers are good, usually. Maybe it was the battle that was bad. But how am I going to deal with that hypothesis? I became an expert witness for one of the guards, Sergeant Chip Frederick, and in that position, I had access to the dozen investigative reports. I had access to him. I could study him, have him come to my home, get to know him, do psychological analysis to see was he a good apple or bad apple. And thirdly, I had access to all of the 1,000 pictures that these soldiers took. These pictures are of a violent or sexual nature. All of them come from the cameras of American soldiers. Because everybody has a digital camera, cell phone camera, they took pictures of everything, more than 1,000. What I've done is I've organized them into various categories, but these are by United States military police, Army reservists. They were not soldiers prepared for this mission at all. And it all happened in a single place, Tier 1A, on the night shift. Why? Tier 1A was the center for military intelligence. It was the interrogation hold. CIA was there, interrogators from Titan Corporation, all there, and they're getting no information about the insurgency. So they're going to put pressure on these soldiers, military police, to cross the line, give them permission to break the will of the enemy, to prepare them for interrogation, to soften them up, to take the gloves off. Those are the euphemisms. And this is how it was interpreted. Let's go down.
Okay. So imagine all those things I was telling you about, or like put them in the terrible positions and stuff, and taking the pictures and smiling with them and stuff.
So pretty horrific. That's one of the visual illustration of evil. And it should not have escaped you that the reason I paired the prisoner with his arms out with Leonardo da Vinci's Ode to Humanity is that prisoner was mentally ill. That prisoner covered himself with shit every day. They used to have to roll him in dirt so he wouldn't stink. But the guards ended up calling him shit boy. What was he doing in that prison rather than in some mental institution? In any event, here's former Secretary of Defense Rumsfeld. He comes down and says, I want to know who was responsible. Who are the bad apples? Well, that's a bad question. You have to reframe it and ask, what is responsible? Because what could be the who of people, but it could also be the what of the situation. And obviously that's where I'm headed. So how do psychologists go about understanding such transformations of human character if you believe that they were good soldiers before they went down to the dungeons? There are three ways. The main way is what's called dispositional. We look at what's inside of the person, the bad apples. This is the foundation of all of social science, the foundation of religion, the foundation of law. Social psychologists like me come along and say, yeah, people are the actors on the stage, but you'll have to be aware of what the situation is. Who are the cast of characters? What's the costume? Is there a stage director? And so we're interested in what are the external factors around the individual, the bad barrel. And social scientists stop there, and they miss the big point that I discovered when I became an expert with Abu Ghraib. The power is in the system. The system creates a situation that corrupts the individual. The system is the legal, political, economic, cultural background. And this is where the power is of the bad barrel makers. So you want to change the person, you got to change the situation. You want to change the situation, you got to know where the power is in the system. So the Lucifer effect involves understanding human character transformations with these three factors. And it's a dynamic interplay. What do the people bring into the situation? What does the situation bring out of them? And what is the system that creates and maintains that situation? So my book, The Lucifer Effect, recently published, is about how do you understand how good people turn evil, and it has a lot of detail about what I'm going to talk about today. So Dr. Z's Lucifer Effect, although it focuses on evil, really is a celebration of the human mind's infinite capacity to make any of us kind or cruel, caring or indifferent, creative or destructive, and it makes some of us villains. And the good news story that I'm going to hopefully come to at the end is it makes some of us heroes. This is a wonderful cartoon in the New Yorker which really summarized my whole talk. I'm neither a good cop nor a bad cop, Jerome. Like yourself, I'm a complex amalgam of positive and negative personality traits that emerge or not depending on the circumstances.
If you don't laugh at that, don't feel weird. It's from the New Yorker. People, not a lot of people laugh at those cartoons.
This is a study some of you think you know about, but very few people have ever read the story. You watched the movie. This is Stanley Milgram, little Jewish kid from the Bronx, and he asked the question, could the Holocaust happen here, now? He said, no, that's Nazi Germany, that's Hitler. That's 1939. He said, yeah, but suppose Hitler asked you, would you electrocute a stranger? No way, not me, I'm a good person. He said, why don't we put you in a situation and give you a chance to see what you would do? And so what he did was he tested 1,000 ordinary people, 500 in New Haven, Connecticut, 500 in Bridgeport. And the ad said, psychologists want to understand memory. We want to improve people's memory, because memory is the key to success, okay? We're going to give you $5, $4 for your time. And we don't want college students, we want men between 20 and 50, in the latest studies there are women, ordinary people, barbers, clerks, white-collar people. So you go down, and one of you is going to be a learner, one of you is going to be a teacher. The learner is a genial middle-aged guy. He gets tied up to the shock apparatus in another room. The learner could be middle-aged, could be as young as 20. And one of you is told by the authority, the guy in a lab coat, your job as teacher is to give this guy material to learn. Gets it right, reward him. Gets it wrong, you press a button on the shock box. First button is 15 volts. He doesn't even feel it. That's the key. All evil starts with 15 volts. And then the next step is another 15 volts. The problem is, at the end of the line is 450 volts. And as you go along, the guy is screaming, got a heart condition, I'm out of here. You're a good person, you complained. Sir, who's going to be responsible if something happens to him? Experiment says, don't worry, I will be responsible. Go continue, teacher. And the question is, who would go all the way to 450 volts? You should notice here, when it gets up to 375, it says dangerous to be a shock. When it gets up to here, there's triple X, the pornography of power. So Milgram asked 40 psychiatrists, what percent of American citizens would go to the end? They said only 1%. Because that's sadistic behavior, and we know, psychiatry knows only 1% of Americans are sadistic. Okay, here's the data. They could not be more wrong. 2/3 go all the way to 450 volts. This was just one study. Milgram did more than 16 studies. And look at this. In study 16, when you see somebody like you go all the way, 90% go all the way. In study 5, if you see people rebel, 90% rebel. What about women? Study 13, no different than men. So Milgram is quantifying evil as the willingness of people to blindly obey authority to go all the way to 450 volts. And it's like a dial on human nature. A dial in the sense that you can make almost everybody totally obedient, down to the majority, down to none. So what are the external parallels? All research is artificial. What's the validity in the real world? 912 American citizens committed suicide or were murdered by family and friends in Guyana jungle in 1978 because they were blindly obedient to this guy, the pastor, not the priest, the pastor, Reverend Jim Jones. He persuaded them to commit mass suicide. And so he's the modern Lucifer, a man of God who becomes the angel of death. Milgram's study is all about individual authority to control people. Most of the time, we are in institutions. So the Stanford Prison study is a study of the power of institutions to influence individual behavior. Interestingly, Stanley Milgram and I were in the same high school class in James Monroe in the Bronx, 1954. So this study, which I did with my graduate students, especially Craig Haney, we also began with an ad. We didn't have money, so we had a cheap little ad, but we wanted college students for a study of prison life. 75 people volunteered, took personality tests, we did interviews, picked 24, most normal, most healthy, randomly assigned them to be prison guard. So on day 1, we knew we had good apples. I'm going to put them in a bad situation. And secondly, we know there's no difference between the boys who are going to be guards, the boys who are going to be prisoners. The kids who are going to be prisoners, we said, wait at home in the dormitories, whose study will begin Sunday. We didn't tell them that the city police were going to come and do realistic arrests.
Is that the movie you watched in psychology?
We watched all this stuff. All of the changes.
Okay.
Voltage, pretty much not.
But you haven't seen the guy talking.
No.
The guy who's explaining it all is new. Okay.
It's in this, then we saw, or I saw, the actual pictures from that room, like where it's bad stuff.
But you haven't seen this whole video.
Police car pulls up in front, and a cop comes to the front door, knocks, and says he's looking for me. So right there, they took me out the door, they put my hands against the car. It was a real cop car, it was a real policeman, and there were real neighbors in the street who didn't know that this was an experiment. And there was cameras all around, and neighbors all around, and they put me in the car, then they drove me around Palo Alto. They took me to the police station, the basement of the police station. Then they put me in a cell. I was the first one to be picked up, so they put me in a cell, which is just like a room with a door with bars on it. You could tell it wasn't a real jail. They locked me in there in this degrading little outfit. They were taking this experiment too seriously. Here are the prisoners who are going to be dehumanized. They're going to become numbers. Here are the guards with the symbols of power and anonymity. Guards get prisoners to clean the toilet bowls out with their bare hands, to do other humiliating tasks. They strip them naked. They sexually taunt them. They begin to do degrading activities, like having them simulate sodomy. You saw simulating fellatio in Soldiers in Abu Ghraib. My guards did it in 5 days. The stress reaction was so extreme that normal kids we picked because they're healthy had breakdowns within 36 hours. The study ended after 6 days because it was out of control. 5 kids had emotional breakdown. Does it make a difference if warriors go to battle, changing their appearance or not? Does it make a difference if they're anonymous in how they treat their victims? We know in some cultures they go to war, they don't change their appearance. In other cultures they paint themselves like Lord of the Flies. And some they wear masks, and many soldiers are anonymous in uniform. So with this anthropologist, John Watson, found 23 cultures that had 2 bits of data. Do they change their appearance? 15. Do they kill, torture, mutilate? 13. If they don't change their appearance, only 1 of 8 kills, torture, mutilate. The key is in the red zone. If they change their appearance, 12 of 13, that's 90%, kill, torture, mutilate. And that's the power of anonymity. So what are the 7 social processes that increase the slippery slope of evil? Mindless is the first small step. Dehumanization of others, de-individuation of self, diffusion of personal responsibility, blind obedience to authority, uncritical conformity to group norms, passive tolerance of evil.
Now this right here is essentially like, this is why I'm saying like it's very important to always seek out like the most difficult sets of causes and effect and go for it remote, not just immediate, and not just think, oh well, this cause leads to this one effect, because this is a situation where this guy's at like 7 so far and he's not even done. There's gonna be an 8th one, but there's 8 different causes, and really they're all under one big blanket cause, which is the creation of like bad institutions and bad systems. But that's a very complicated set of different factors that have to go together to make people transgress.
Action or indifference. And it happens when you're in a new or unfamiliar situation. Your habitual response patterns don't work. Your personality and morality are disengaged. Nothing is easier than to denounce the evildoer. Nothing more difficult than understanding him, Dostoevsky tells us. Understanding is not excusing. Psychology is not excusology. So social psychological research reveals how ordinary good people can be transformed without the drugs. You don't need it. You just need the social psychological processes. Real world parallels. Compare this with this. James Schlesinger, I'm going to have to end with this, says psychologists have attempted to understand how.
By the way, you're going to hear, like when you click something wrong on the computer, like that, bong, bong, like you're going to hear that. I don't know if it's them trying to stop his presentation because he's going too long, and somebody else who's in the background overriding that because they think it's a good presentation. But you hear that click cap, and it's not my computer, it's theirs. So don't think that I'm doing something. Try to still listen to what's being said despite the noise.
Why individuals and groups who usually act humanely can sometimes act otherwise in certain circumstances. That's the Lucifer effect. And he goes on to say, the landmark Stanford study provides a cautionary tale for all military operations. If you give people power without oversight, it's a prescription for abuse. They knew that and let that happen. So another report, investigative report by General Fay, says the system is guilty. And in this report he says it was the environment created Abu Ghraib. by leadership failures that contribute to the occurrence of such abuse, and the fact that it remained undiscovered by higher authorities for a long period of time. Those abuses went on for 3 months. Who was watching the store? The answer is nobody, and I think nobody on purpose. He gave the guards permission to do those things, and they knew nobody was ever going to come down to that dungeon. So you need a paradigm shift in all these areas. The shift is away from the medical model that focused only on the individual. And the shift is toward a public health model that recognizes situational and systemic vectors of disease. Bullying is a disease, prejudice is a disease, violence is a disease, and since the Inquisition, we've been dealing with problems at the individual level. And you know why? It doesn't work. Alexander Solzhenitsyn says the line between good and evil cuts through the heart of every human being. That means that line is not out there. That's a decision that you have to make. That's a personal thing. So I want to end very quickly on a positive note. Heroism as the antidote to evil. By promoting the heroic imagination, especially in our kids, in our educational system, we want kids to think, I'm a hero in waiting for the right situation to come along, and I will act heroically. My whole life is I'm going to focus away from evil I've been in since I was a kid to understanding heroes. The banality of heroism is it's ordinary people who do heroic deeds. It's the counterpoint to Hannah Arendt's banality of evil. Our traditional societal heroes are wrong because they are the exception. They organize their whole life around this. That's why we know their names. And our kids' heroes are also role models for them because they have supernatural talents. We want our kids to realize most heroes are everyday people. And the heroic act is unusual. This is Joe Darby. He was the one that stopped those abuses you saw because when he saw those images, he turned them over to senior investigating officer. He was a low-level private, and that stopped it. Was he a hero? No. They had to put him in hiding because people wanted to kill him, and then his mother and his wife. For 3 years, they were in hiding. This is the woman who stopped us to have a prison site. When I said it got out of control, I was a prison superintendent. I didn't know it was out of control. I was totally indifferent. She came down, saw that madhouse, and said, you know what? It's terrible what you're doing to those boys. They're not prisoners, they're not guards, they're boys, and you are responsible. And I ended the study the next day. The good news is I married her the next year. I just came to my senses, obviously. So situations have the power to do good. But the point is, it's the same situation that can inflame the hostile imagination in some of us that makes us perpetrators of evil, can inspire the heroic imagination in others. It's the same situation, and you're on one side or the other. Most people are guilty of the evil of inaction because your mother said, don't get involved, mind your own business. And you have to say, Mama, humanity is my business. So the psychology of heroism is, we're going to end in a moment, how do we encourage children in new hero courses that I'm working with Matt Langdon, he has a hero workshop, to develop this heroic imagination, self-labeling, I am a hero in waiting, and teach them skills. To be a hero, you have to learn to be a deviant, because you're always going against the conformity of the group. Heroes are ordinary people whose social action is extraordinary, who act. The key to heroes is two things. You have to act when other people are passive. B, you have to act sociocentrically, not egocentrically. And I want to end with a story that some of you know about Wesley Autry, New York subway hero, 50-year-old African-American construction worker. He's standing on a subway in New York, a white guy falls on the tracks. The subway train is coming. There's 75 people there. You know what? They freeze. He's got a reason not to get involved. He's black, the guy's white, and he's got two little kids. Instead, he gives his kids to a stranger, jumps on the tracks, puts the guy between the tracks, lays on him, the subway goes over him. Wesley and the guy, 20.5 inches height. The train clearance is 21 inches. A half an inch would have taken his head off. And he said, I did what anyone could do, no big deal to jump the tracks. And the moral imperative is, I did what everyone should do. And so one day, you will be in a new situation. Take path one, you're going to be a perpetrator of evil. Evil meaning you're going to be Arthur Anderson. You're going to cheat, or you're going to allow bullying. Path two, you become guilty of the evil of passive inaction. Path three, you become a hero. The point is, are we ready to take the path to celebrating ordinary heroes, waiting for the right situation to come along to put heroic imagination into action? Because it may only happen once in your life. When you pass it by, you'll always know, I could have been a hero, and I let it pass me by. So the point is thinking it and then doing it. So I want to thank you, thank you, thank you. Let's oppose the power of evil systems at home and abroad. And let's focus on the positive. Advocate for respect and personal dignity, for justice and peace, which sadly our administration has not been doing. Thanks so much.
So, and you can flip one of those light switches back on. So basically, when it came down to it, what he was talking about was this. So these are all the, like, I guess 8 combined causes that have to bring about that one singular effect. Really, it's 3 possible effects. One is that somebody can straight up become evil. Another one is that most people are, passively inactive. They just, I think about like the Holocaust. Some people end up becoming the soldiers who, gather people up. Some become the people who are at home who are like, well, I don't want to cause a problem. And then the rest are like the people usually has to be people on the outside, sadly. It's often, rarely somebody who's just going to go against everybody in their society to become a hero like that. But those are 3 possible effects that are brought about all by these 8 different causes, which he says are even caused by one big greater cause, which is he thinks, intentional creation of systems which bring about these particular causes, which is really complicated, but it's the kind of cause and effect analysis I would expect you to try to do, and not just deal with just what you can see immediately. So, he went through it really quick and didn't hit one of these, but mindlessly taking the first small steps, and Ray talked about just doing a slight voltage zap. If you think it's nothing at first and then just gradually steps up from there, it doesn't feel that bad when you're gradually moving up. Dehumanization of others, so you have to think of others not really as people, but just or not as a particular person, but maybe as a person, not somebody who's specific to you. And the same, you have to think of yourself as anonymous to them. There has to be some sort of blind obedience to authority. So just if there's an authority figure, you just kind of follow what they do. An uncritical conformity to group norms. There's a set of rules people generally follow, and especially if they come from that authority figure, then you follow that set of rules. And then passive tolerance fuel through inaction or indifference. It's you don't go outside and go against those critical norms of the authority figure, and you just sort of let something happen. It has to be also in a new and unfamiliar situation. It's something you're not prepared for, because usually if you have a set of experiences to make a judgment, you can make a decision, but if you don't, it's difficult. So, and often in some cases, as you saw, and I don't think he talks about this, but he should have, even taking one of these steps out of the process can completely change it where it doesn't work anymore. He talked about, even the mindlessly taking the first small step. So, in those voltage experiences where they go all the way up, remember that Joe Darby guy who was saying stop the Abu Ghraib prison thing? I think it was just because he came in and saw it at its highest point. He wasn't there for the gradual build, or he probably would have been in the same situation. The same with his eventual wife, who saw the Stanford study. Had she not come in 6 days in and been the hell is this? If she'd been there the whole time, she probably wouldn't have noticed either. It's just when people don't see that gradual, they see the latest effect, holy crap, look at the way these things have gone. And I think if somebody had walked in during those voltage experiences and just wandered in on the 16th electrocution, they'd have been like, what are you doing? And they're like, well, huh? So because they've been gradually doing it, and then you see it all of a sudden. So even taking one of these causes out might not bring any of the effects. So altogether, I think it's pretty interesting. Now what happened earlier with me and the way the class worked in the beginning was I tried to set up a situation which was very, very similar to this. I tried to bring all of these different aspects into the paper situation. So basically I had to mindlessly take in the first small step. It's basically here's a piece of paper, write a thing on it. And you're like, oh, I've done that before, no big deal. Dehumanization of others, so I paired you with somebody on a list that you didn't know who they were, and also they didn't know who you were, so the individuation of self, right? You're like, oh, they don't know who I am, so I can do whatever, because they're not going to know. Now, if I had told you who you're paired with, you'd be like, oh, they're going to know I did this. And you probably wouldn't do it. You'd probably be like, can I talk to him real quick? Yeah, sure, go talk to him. So I also needed you to have this weird sort of blind obedience to authority, so I said, okay, well, I'm the teacher figure. Generally speaking, if I say something, it's going to be followed. So I just said, no talking. And you're like, oh, okay, no talking. So we can't talk this out, figure out what to do. Or you get a 0, and you're like, oh gosh, I don't like zeros. Uncritical conformity to group norms. I'm supposed to not want zeros, and I don't. So I better just not talk. And then passive tolerance. And he says evil. I don't think it's always evil, but it's kind of just a passive inaction where you're like, I guess I'll go along with this, but hopefully everything turns out okay. Because it was a new and unfamiliar situation. What are you supposed to do? Nichols, what does he do? Get him! You know, like, he can't, like, I'm not following this, Nickel. I've never had somebody just stand up and be like, this is bull crap. Like, but I guess he's saying, like, if that did happen, I would be like, hey, heroic imagination. I could just skip all the rest. I wouldn't really do that. I'd say, sit down, be quiet, don't get another deer.
Get another zero.
But so I set all this up. So let me see. I designed a bad system on purpose, so I mean, it wasn't necessarily anybody's fault. Like I did this. I spent a long time thinking about this and looking at this like slide and figuring out how can I set up a situation which basically brings the same thing to the students. And I had to make it where like I stigmatized talking, so y'all couldn't figure out like what to do. Additionally, there is the possibility that every single person rationally figures out. I mean, if you think about what's the most rational decision, for the individual, you think, okay, I might get 100 or a 0. Got to go with the 100 choice. But if you think about every single other person in the room is thinking, I want the 100, everybody's going to get a 20. So the only way to make that actually work is to, everybody says I died, everybody gets a 60. Now, if that did happen, that would not work for me. So I also wanted to emphasize how bad blind authority and bad systems are. So when it came to the list in which your names are paired, there is no list. It was just a blank sheet of paper with tally marks. So nobody was actually paired with anybody. And I figured if y'all did vote the wrong way, if everybody voted I die, I'll just lie. Because it was more important for me to get the result that I wanted. And who knows how often that happens in systems, right? Like in institutions, where somebody just says, well, we've gathered data, and it turns out that this is the truth. And you're like, oh, okay, well, they've gathered data. And they're like, oh, they made up the data. Oops. Now, granted, I don't do this all the time, so please don't not ever trust me again. But it was just in nature. Think about actors. You know, you wouldn't be like, that person lies all the time on stage. I can't trust them. No, I'm just doing this for like an example. But let me see. I think I covered all that stuff. So I basically designed the whole system around that, and that stuff can happen in real life as well. So it's important to be aware of all these possible situations and everything that you do, especially in new and unfamiliar situations. That's where you're going to do the weirdest stuff. And think about like, have y'all heard of, there was a few years back, there was like a shooting in a movie theater, and they were playing Dark Knight Rises. That guy came in and said, like, I'm the Joker or something. They asked him later, that's what he said, like, and he shot people. Like, if you think about anybody who's shooting a gun, right? I mean, if it's just an individual shooting a gun, if they're not in a mech, you know, like something like out of Fallout, where it's this robotic costume they're in that can knock people off, if you get 5 dudes and they bum rush the guy, they've got him on the ground and he can't shoot anybody, you know? Pin his arms. But that never happens. Everybody runs away because they're thinking egocentrically instead of sociocentrically. But if everybody was thinking about everybody else, they would knock everybody down and nobody would get shot, except maybe like 2 or 3 people. But everybody doesn't think like that. They think egocentrically, not sociocentrically. But it's important to think about everybody else, not yourselves. It's very difficult to do that. Our natural instinct is to think, how do I fix everything for me in the moment? Not, how do I do everything for everybody at the same time? And it's very, because of the random nature too. You don't know if what you do sociocentrically is going to work, but when you go egocentrically, it makes more sense. Like with the paper situation, you're like, I could write I die all day, but I don't know what the hell everybody else is going to do. So that's not even a good decision. So I've got to write I live because it's the only thing I can do for myself. And I did that on purpose. So if we look at our terminology and how this works, the main cause really is that bad system created by the people in power. So it's not like he says a bad apple, like you're not a bad apple. And it's not even really that it's a bad barrel that's like corrupting the apples. It's that somebody made the barrel on purpose so that it would corrupt the apples. Like me. It's also a remote cause because you don't think about somebody's creation of the system. Even something like, I mean, I don't even know if you've thought about this before, but like we have our system of like law enforcement set up where you have like these tools of power and you've got like a uniform on. So even though you've got like a badge number and stuff, there is that whole like anonymity thing. And I think they found that even like the introduction of body cameras, that I read that in the UK when they introduced body cameras for every police officer in the UK, strangely, the biggest effect it had was there were, I think, 90% less complaints by people because they realized that everything that they were doing was on camera. And so not only did it have an effect on the anonymity from the cops' point of view, but also the anonymity from the people's point of view. So a lot of times this remote, like even looking at like systems like how we design our police, maybe could be like rethought about so that not only like the police get what they want, but also the people get what they want as well. And then the immediate cause is a contributory cause, the individual's selfish abuse of power, which actually isn't the cause, it's just this contributing factor. And the full effect is the abuse of the prisoners, ignoring of fellow students, because I want my grade. Now, granted, I recognize there was another like hidden cause, and I totally believe that this is probably true in like 60 to 75% of your cases. That you may have gone, okay, so this assignment's weird, and if he actually goes through with this and gives us zeros like this would be highly unethical. And then either A, he's creating some sort of farce to help teach a lesson, so this is all fake, or B, he's lost his mind, and if he does go through with this, I can just go to his superiors and get him fired. Which that's probably on all of your minds, right? You're like, yeah, if he goes through with this, somebody's going to hear something. And that is probably true, and I would totally encourage you, if ever somebody did do something entirely unethical like that, you'd say, superiors? It's really weird.
Putting my grade on the dice.
He's like, did I just somebody rolled for my grade? Like, this is not how life should work. Strangely though, sadly, it actually is how life does work in some cases. But still, I recognize that all of you, when I'm saying like, oh, with passive inaction, you abandon your fellow students, most of you probably felt like there's no way this is actually going to be real, so I can do whatever. This is going to be fake. So I understand that. So it's not like you were really doing all the things I was saying you were doing. And now the point in all this is to remind you all to closely analyze any and all situations you're doing for the cause effect, and not only that, but in real life. Look at even the remotest of remote causes. Because, I mean, you're going to need this in personal relationships, finances, child rearing, employment, all that stuff. You're going to have causes, and you're going to figure out, well, how do I stop this from happening? How do I keep my kid from doing drugs after they've already started? You know, all kinds of weird stuff. Like, my kid's not doing drugs. This could all, I didn't want that to be like, huh? Yeah, baby. Well, I have a 13-year-old, too. This could also, and this is my true goal here, beyond just the cause-effect aspect of the lesson, result in a more heightened awareness of the attentions we should pay to the thoughts and feelings of others outside of ourselves, which is something I don't think we do quite enough. So you all have a great day.